can be found on a public domain, and the full disclaimers down below. Hey, welcome to the Danger Zone. It's Ashley. I wish you lots of love and many blessings.
Do you remember, or do you have awareness to what the reason for the drugs and the drinking was, apart from having a great time and now knowing that you can afford it?
Yeah.
Touching on what we talked about at the beginning, like there's a reason for that. And for you, it was your upbringing and everything that happened to you, the trauma and the pain and the suffering.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you find yourself doing a shitload of drugs and partying hard.
Yeah.
Look how many other people do that as well. They wouldn't necessarily have the awareness at the time. I certainly didn't have the awareness when I was going wild.
Yeah.
Like, why am I actually doing this? In the moment, it's like, well, why not?
It's fun.
Right.
In my 20s, that's what you're supposed to do, isn't it?
Because you can't remember everything you've done in the last 12 years, but Google knows what you've done for the last 12 years in a nanosecond.
And I think they get to wash, at the moment, until it changes, at the moment they get to wash their hands of responsibility, because it's like, oh, it's not human error. It's a computer. It's like, who wrote the algorithms?
Yeah.
You guys did.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty soon the
Probably
algorithms...
all male and all white.
Yeah.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are, you and I, a couple white males, pontificating.
Toy and print, but how?
Well, even I'm like, what could she have expected, that she was going to go drive around town and everything would be normal? Like, I had that thought of, like, she's super intelligent. She couldn't have thought. Now, mind you, I learned she didn't leave the house for 5 months. That's like solitary confinement. So I recognize it's even way worse than you could imagine. But I did think, like, oh, you couldn't have thought, oh, I'm going to just travel freely now.
No, of course not. And she never thought that. I think she said before she expected it to be fair.
Yeah.
Which I think anybody does. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm a public role model, or I'm a public figure, or I'm a celebrity, whatever it is, you expect a certain element of interest in your life.
Sure.
But at the same time, you still expect to be able to have a private life.
Yeah.
As opposed to this idea of every time you step foot outside, you get chased.
Yeah.
And even when you stay inside, because of the way that social media is now, you're everywhere while you're nowhere.
Yeah.
So actually, and also, by the way, if it's not true, then that is unfair.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Especially when you can't defend yourself. So, yes, I think when you marry into it, especially when it's one of Princess Diana's sons, I never saw it, I never knew about it, and then suddenly I started to piece it all together and go, okay, so this is where he went to school, this is what happened, I know this bit about his life, I also know that's connected to his parents.
Yeah.
So that means that he's treating me the way that he was treated.
Exactly.
Which means, how can I change that for my own kids? And well, here I am. I've now moved my whole family to the US. Well, that wasn't the plan. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But sometimes
Family and for
And
you.
if things go sideways with you and Megan, just...
Okay, the house right over there.
Yeah, we could be neighbors. We go to the dunes all the time.
No, it's really amazing.
Harry has proven himself to be beyond a spoiled brat. He was on a podcast with Shepard, and he wanted to paint this picture like he lived in just the worst of the worst conditions. His dad was extremely neglectful, not at all emotionally connected to him, very absent in his life. And I guess the worst part of all of this is the fact that he's putting the blame, basically, on his grandparents, that his dad is just parenting from a learned behavior that he himself went through growing up. He's nearly 40 years old, and this is his way of getting back at his family for not giving him his way. He's just throwing a tantrum. It's almost like the one time his family finally puts their foot down with him and says, no, we're not going to sit there and shuck out money to you just because you want more. He's now turning everything around on them, making them look like the villains. His granddad hadn't even been in the ground, 3 weeks? And he's just ripping these people to shreds. He accused his grandparents of being extremely abusive and neglectful to his own dad, using that as an excuse as to why Charles was such a crappy dad. And the more he opens his mouth, the more lies just plop right out of it. He said growing up in the royal family was like a mix between the Truman Show and living in a zoo. He said if he ever wanted to go out and do anything, he had to dress incognito and look down at the ground, hoping people wouldn't recognize him. In my opinion, that's total BS, and I'll tell you why. Every picture of him with Meghan here in the States or in Canada, he's dressed incognito. He's had a ball cap on, looking down at the ground with a bandana over his face. And all the pictures that you can find of him and his home turf, he's totally relaxed, walking head up, Whoever he's with, acting totally comfortable, not worried. He's not walking with his head down. Then he went on to describe his and Megan's very first meetup, their very first encounter together. They agreed to meet at a supermarket. Now listen, if you are so afraid to be recognized that you literally put on disguises to go out in public, and you have to keep your eyes focused on the ground, looking at bubblegum and shoes, as he said, why would you agree to meet up in a public supermarket? This is not... They need help. And even though they both agreed to meet in the supermarket, they had to stay on separate aisles and flirt text because he couldn't allow anybody to know that he knew this Hollywood starlet Megan. I'm curious as to how long it took him to learn the lines to repeat such a goofy story. If he ever wises up and decides to leave this situation, he's going to look back and be super embarrassed. There's no other choice. This is like so sad and pathetic. But it gets worse. He's told Gail King, one of his handlers, all sorts of private information on his grandmother that she plans on doing some sort of show about the Queen's private life. Good thing nobody's taking him too seriously. Even Forbes magazine is dogging him down. How's he asking for privacy? Doing more interviews? None of this proves that he's mentally unstable. I don't know what else would. Oh, but yes, I do. One of his buddies said that he says the most efficient way to live life is truthfully. Yeah. I can't wait to tell you guys about the Chrissy Teigen situation, and that'll be the next video. Having a good day today. I'll see you soon and we'll talk fast. Y'all stay safe and be blessed.